Chaitanya Caritamrita, Adi-lila, chapter 9, text number 45. Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Malehana brikshaha ilan eta ichchate.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Sava pranira upakara haya brikshahaite.
Malehana. Although I am the gardener, Vrikshaha ilan, I am also the tree. Eta, this is, ichchate, by my will. Sava pranira, of all living entities. Upakara, welfare. Haya, there is. Vriksha, tree. Haite, from. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although I am acting as a gardener, I also want to be the tree, for thus I can bestow benefit upon all. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most benevolent personality in human society because his only desire is to make people happy. His Sankirtan movement is especially meant for the purpose of making people happy. He wanted to become the tree himself because a tree is supposed to be the most benevolent living entity. In the following verse, which is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:22-33, Krishna himself highly praised the existence of a tree. So just to put it in context, how the tree is being described, this is Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto. Aho isham janma sava prani upajivanam shujaneshyeva yesham vai vimuka yanti natinaha. Just see how these trees are maintaining every living entity. Their birth is successful. Their behavior is just like that of great personalities. For anyone who asks anything from a tree never goes away disappointed. Purport. According to Vedic civilization, Kshatriyas are considered to be great personalities because if anyone goes to a Kshatriya king to ask for charity, the king will never refuse. The trees are compared to those noble Kshatriyas because everyone derives all kinds of benefits from them. Some people take fruit, others take flowers, others take leaves, others take twigs, and others even cut the tree. And yet the tree gives to everyone without hesitation. Unnecessarily cutting trees without consideration is another example of human debauchery. The paper industry cuts many hundreds and thousands of trees for its mills, and with the paper, so much rubbish literature is published for the whimsical satisfaction of human society. Unfortunately, although these industrialists are now happy in this life by dint of their industrial development, they do not know that they will incur the responsibility for killing these living entities who are in the forms of trees. This verse, quoted from Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken by Lord Krishna to his friends when he was taking rest underneath a tree after his pastime of stealing the clothes of the gopis, Vastra Harana Lila. By quoting this verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that we should be tolerant like trees and also beneficial like trees, which give everything to the needy person who come underneath them. The persons who come underneath them. A needy person may derive many advantages from trees and also from many animals, but in modern civilization people have become so ungrateful that they exploit the trees and animals and kill them. These are some of the sinful activities of modern civilization. Om Gyanam Timurandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshushanmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripasindhuvayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Chaitanya Charitamrita is pointing us towards appreciation of what we can observe in nature and then applying it to the principle of serving Krishna. The modern approach is to try and exploit nature, to take advantage of nature, to destroy nature. Many of the original settlers who came to Australia, they observed the landscape and they considered it very hostile. The original famous painters, they couldn't paint Australian bush. They would paint European style trees because that was what they felt comfortable with. So here we have some tough lessons to learn from our environment. But still, in any environment, there are so many supportive elements. The trees and the animals and the plants. And in many different climates, there's always food available. There's always things that will grow to sustain people. That we're not ever going to go without. To be able to identify which plants are going to thrive in this environment, which plants are going to be edible, which plants are going to be medicinal, and how to use all of these plants is valuable survival information. And nowadays people have just become completely separated from that experience. They're living with credit cards and internet, and the children at school, even though nowadays there's more education towards growing things and they have a little bit of experience of that, a lot of children, they still don't understand the relationship between the animals and man. They don't understand that the cow gives milk. They don't have any, they might understand theoretically, they don't have any experience of it. So their lives are quite niggardly, and therefore they're being led by debauched people who are wholesale slaughtering animals and wholesale destroying forests and using the results of those activities for wicked sense gratification. Not religious goals at all. So to rejuvenate people's awareness of who they are, even just in relationship with their local environment, is a great service. It's a great beginning towards the awakening of people's original relationship with the Supreme. Let them first start to relate to nature. But nobody will do that unless they can see the benefit. What are the advantages? What will they get from it? So the Krishna consciousness movement, another aspect of the Sankirtan movement, is the distribution of prasadam, distribution of sanctified foodstuff, that you can be sustained, you can remain alive without killing the animals, without having to resort to destroying living entities. And that has a very profound effect. There's, I think Australia has one of the largest proportions of restaurants per capita within the whole world. Last time I counted, there was 20 or 30 restaurants, outlets, maybe even up to 40 outlets, prasadam outlets in Australia compared to the population, which is 25, maybe 30 million. And in other countries it's not such a high percentage. So, and Prabhupada, even when he was here, he, after trying to get some intelligent questions from the audience in Australia, he after one particularly dull interchange, he turned to his disciples and said, "Meatheads," under the breath. So he gave an alternative way to deal with this country, and that was to increase the distribution of prasadam and to have kirtan, because kirtan is such a joyous experience, to give people access to this spiritual meditation, culture, festivities. So the kirtan and the prasadam were the gifts of Srila Prabhupada to this particular environment, this particular climate, this particular population. It all stems back here to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is described in this chapter to be extolling, encouraging everybody to perform the topmost welfare work, to give these gifts that Lord Chaitanya had brought, that had been well understood and well served in India, Bharatvash, to spread them throughout the world. Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's the verse, Priti Viti Achayati Nagaradi Gram Savatra Prachara Hoibe Moranam, that Lord Chaitanya, he understood and he predicted, he envisaged that his holy name would be glorified in every town and village in the world. And many people, due to their lack of faith, lack of experience, lack of commitment, lack of sincerity, to take the words of Lord Chaitanya, to take the words of the Acharyas to heart, they couldn't conceive of how this exalted culture, pristine culture of serving the divine couple through glorifying their names, fames, activities and pastimes and abode, how that could spread beyond Punya Bhumi into the other countries of the world, the Malechadesh and other degraded places. So Lord Chaitanya, he's taking here he's guiding those who are in the human form of life, Bharata Bhumate Holya Manusya Janma, those who have a human form of life, to perfect their lives, to make their lives perfect, and then to help other humans to also become perfect. And in that way then they will uplift everybody, all of the living entities within society. Srimad Bhagavatam starts with, this is in the preface, this is a profound presentation for the upliftment of the whole society. And Prabhupada says, nay, of all living beings. The Srimad Bhagavatam is there to uplift all living beings through the via medium of glorifying Krishna, preaching the glories of Krishna, distributing the holy name of Krishna, distributing the understanding of Krishna. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's using now the analogy of the gardener and also the tree. He's a gardener, and he's been describing in recent verses that how many fruits can he alone eat? Because when you get into the garden and you have some healthy plants, then you get an abundance that's overwhelming. Prabhupada is describing how the trees and the Vedic literatures always describe it, a beautiful atmosphere. You list all of the different trees that are there. The bakula tree, which has a heavenly fragrance. The jackfruit tree. One jackfruit tree, a huge jackfruit tree, can feed a village for a long time. It's a very, very healthy tree. Mangoes. Here we have mango orchards. We're surrounded by mangoes. Sadhbhuj was telling me they had a very good mango season in India this year. And he'd get a couple of kilograms of mangoes every day. They were dirt cheap. I had one friend when we were living there, he was eating on his own a couple of kilograms of mangoes. Often us Westerners, we think, okay, and we've heard, if you eat too many mangoes, then you'll get boils, because they heat the sugar in. But it depends on how you take them. There's the mangoes, when they're green, they cool you down. So you have to have some green mango drink. And the mangoes, if you just take mangoes, and if you're not taking other things, then there's ways of consuming. And then we were travelling with Ramaswamy up north, and it was mango season. We were up in Townsville and Cairns, and there were all these beautiful mango trees on the sides of the road. So we collected a couple of thousand mangoes. We learned a lot about mangoes. You're climbing up in the tree, and when you pick the mango, if you're not careful, because it's under pressure, all of the sap inside, it spits all of this sap. So and there's the analogy of if you're up in a tree and so you're picking a fruit, how do you get it down to the ground? You have to pass it down hand to hand, otherwise it's going to go splatter. So we managed to get a couple of thousand mangoes, and driving down, they were ripening. So every centre that we'd stop at on the way down, we'd shout a big mango lassi feast. I think we got them back here to New Govardhan, and they would have been used for pickles and all sorts of things. So there's so much abundance. A mango tree, sandalwood trees, they are said to make a whole forest very fragrant because of that very exquisite aroma which comes just from the whole tree. And there are other trees which are not so abundant in what they can give, but still there are pious trees and there are impious trees. The impious trees, they don't give flowers. They're just useful for fuel. Here we have in Australia, we have the eucalyptus trees. They have beautiful flowers, and the nectar which comes from them makes some exquisite types of honey. The honey has been a little bit in short supply because there's not been enough water during the drought. So the eucalyptus trees have not been producing enough nectar. They've been surviving, but not enough nectar. But still, the trees, another thing you can get from the trees is the twigs and the shelter and building materials. At the moment, the cost of building materials is skyrocketing because a lot of the trees which were there from the sustainable forest were wiped out by the fires a year ago. So and in other parts of the world, then the trees are being destroyed. So the import of building materials has become a greatly profitable thing, and it's difficult to get and it's very expensive. The tree is beneficial in all different ways. Another observation is that where there are trees, then they attract the rain. If you remove too many trees, then the rain won't stay there. Whether that's a factual reality or not, trees they help to keep the moisture in the soil by dropping their litter, and trees they give shade, there's shelter like that. In this other purport, Prabhupada describes that Caitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us that we should be tolerant like trees and also beneficial like trees. So a tree gives, it never complains, it gives shelter. Even people, they come along, they might carve their initials in the tree. The tree doesn't respond, doesn't do anything. We had one guest here who was into communing with nature, and she described how she'd become a little bit more attuned to nature, and sometimes she would approach trees and she would get a response from them. Get away from me! What are you doing? The trees are actually, they're conscious, and if you, why are you stepping on my roots? if you're not sensitive, and if you don't respect the trees, if you don't, Prabhupada, when he was at John Lennon's estate, as he left, they had to move into the main temple in London. So before he left, he said, "I just want to say goodbye to a few friends." And Prabhupada walked around the grounds in John Lennon's, and he acknowledged his friends. Sometimes if you're walking through the nature, and if you connect with then it's uplifting. There's a theory, or there's a science called thigmomorphism, that you can help plants to grow by just touching them. They relish that sensation. So Prabhupada, he walked around, he said goodbye to all his friends, and that evening a huge windstorm came and uprooted a lot of those trees. So the trees, they benefit from the association of saintly people, and they give an example. Turodapi sahishnana, Janadapi sahishnana, Turor iva sahishnana. That one should become more tolerant than a tree. One more tolerant than a tree. And Prabhupada in one lecture describes tolerance like a tree. One should tolerate being criticized, chastised, abused, without responding, without reacting. The normal response is that why are you thinking like that? Why are you telling me that? Why are you harassing me? But the Vaishnava, the person who has tasted the mood of service to Krishna and understands that where we've come from, our backgrounds, we don't deserve any great respect. So I can tolerate anything. I can tolerate anything. Although once Bhavananda, he was coming to the zone, or coming to one centre, and he arrived at the airport and there was nobody there to greet him. So the people who came to pick him up after some time, the devotees, they apologised, and they observed that he wasn't angry, he wasn't ruffled, he wasn't disturbed so much. So they questioned him. They asked, thank you for tolerating our offences. And then his response was, "I can tolerate anything, but don't push me." So there's a natural limit to that toleration. We shouldn't tolerate nonsense. We shouldn't tolerate absurdity. But if the people are innocent, if the people are suffering, and it's not them, we go out and we try and uplift people, and we see the modes of material nature in action. This person's heavily victimised by the mode of ignorance. This person's heavily victimised by the mode of passion. Here's somebody who's more in the mode of goodness, but still they're conditioned by that. So it's not the person. We don't hate the person. We're concerned about their situation, the mode that they're in. Hate the sin, not the sinner. So tolerate, and Srila Prabhupada, his spiritual master, they tolerated so many difficulties, so many reversals, so many obstacles in order to eventually become successful in spreading Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada, he wanted to study his Srimad Bhagavatam, he wanted to have preaching engagements in his home, he wanted to involve his wife, and she sold the Bhagavatam on him and then gave him an ultimatum. It's either tea or me. She sold the Bhagavatam to buy some tea biscuits. So Prabhupada, he tolerated so much, but he was just at the end of his toleration. He said, "Well, I guess it's going to be me. You can have your tea and I'll move out." Prabhupada then entered the Vanaprastha stage of his life. So tolerance, and always having something to give. Especially if you're involved in the garden, then there's always something to give. During trees, in Vrindavan, they're described to be always full of fruits and flowers in all seasons. There's always These are special trees. These are kalpavriksha trees. So the devotees are described like kalpavriksha trees. You can always have some fruits, something that you can distribute. The animals in Vrindavan, Prabhupada was making a point in some of the last words that he translated in the chapter about Lord Brahma trying to bewilder Krishna. That in the atmosphere of Vrindavan, the animals, they're not envious of each other. There's no envy. They can come together. The animals which would normally be prey and predator, they will come together and they will drink. Even there's the man-eating lions and tigers. So the sadhus, the kshatriyas, they're supposed to be very magnanimous. They're supposed to protect the sadhus. They're supposed to go into the forest and kill the wild animals. But in Vrindavan, the sadhus, they deal directly with the tigers. They keep milk. They keep cows. They milk the cows, and then they leave some containers of milk out, and they invite the tigers, please come and take some milk. And so they're very satisfied. There's a harmony, a peaceful way of living. So the animals, they and the residents of the forest in Vrindavan, all the trees, they've always got something to give, and they understand that this is all the mercy of Krishna. What they've got, they understand this is Krishna's mercy. This is prasad. So whatever they've got, they take and they divide and they share with others. We're on the Polish tour, and the people who really appreciate the prasadam there, because Mahaprasadam was rare, it was very difficult to get. They would get a milk sweet, the devotees, and they would take the milk sweet, realizing this is Mahaprasadam, and they would divide it into about 30 or 40 different pieces and distribute it to all of their friends just to appreciate the value of that Mahaprasadam. So if you have some prasadam, if you can distribute it, you can expand it, and you can appreciate that and share. So that will create the mood of Vrindavan. We see opposite in the material world, then people are always considering there's a shortage, there's not enough food. And it's a fact that people are not properly nourished. I was listening to another class, Prabhupada was saying about Brikoda. Brikoda, he was famous as wolf belly. Brikoda, Bhimshane, wolf belly. So he had a voracious appetite, and he could consume large amounts of prasadam. But Prabhupada also made the comment, because sometimes you feel like I've overeaten again. I remember once having 20 coconut honey balls, and I thought, I'll take them out and I'll distribute them. But after eating 20 of them, I thought, oh my God, how am I going to move? But I managed to get out there and had a lot of energy, and was able to meet a lot of people and ooze some of that honey nectar over them. So Prabhupada, he made the point that if you can eat sumptuously, if you can consume, and sometimes you feel like I've overeaten, but then there's a big task, a big ask coming upon you, you've got enough energy. Be very active, very, very productive. And if we don't nourish ourselves enough, if we're trying to be falsely renounced and avoiding sufficient nutrition, then the weakness, the laissez-faire, the complacent mood is also going to come along with trying to be a little bit falsely renounced. So eat the right thing, and to eat at the right time, and to eat sufficient quantity, enough calories, is very helpful. So in the garden, if you have to purchase things, and you're worried you wasted your money, you've got to keep it for yourself, you've got to be more miserly. But when you have things from the garden, it's just, there's an abundance, it's overflowing, and you're looking for people, who can I give this to? In Mayapur we would get, we had banana trees growing, and when the bananas are ripe, you've got 150 or 200 bananas all at once, and they come ripe. So you can try eating them, 10 a day, 15 a day. And after a while, you just got to look for other people. Help me out. You're forced to be more charitable. And that comes back to you in other times when other things are available in their gardens, people's gardens. Then they'll remember that time they gave me something, so I'll reciprocate. I've got abundance, I'll give. And so to act as the gardener, to be able to deal with all of the produce that's available from the garden, and then also Lord Chaitanya wants to be the tree. The tree is very beneficial to others. He's very tolerant, and in the form of the fruits of love of Godhead. I think in the purport yesterday, richness. Somebody doesn't have to be rich in order to be able to distribute a lot of things, because a gardener, they have these things. They're rich in those fruits and the products from the garden. In terms of Krishna consciousness, we should also make sure that we consume enough spiritual sound vibrations, spiritual activity, spiritual association, spiritual food, so that then we feel nourished and we have sufficient to give. We don't want to give them something less. We want to give them what we've got, because that gift, that appreciation, that treasure of love of Godhead, it's something that we have to get. Korma was always saying that we should be conscious of the fruits that we achieve from our activities. We shouldn't be falsely renounced and not think that I'm just doing it for the sake of duty, I'm just serving Krishna, and we should value the fruits, we should see the fruits. I was out distributing with Try a Dish, and we discussed what our prayer was going to be. I was praying, please give me some mercy. And he came down hard, because he was a tough nut when it came to distributing. He said, "What are you talking about? You've already got the mercy. You should be praying for big mercy, praying for a huge amount of mercy so you can give to other people, so everybody can take the mercy. Not that you just, I've got the mercy and that's it." So the tree, the garden, the forest, all of these analogies, all of these objects that we can think in terms of to fashion, to guide our own behaviour. Not to be selfish, not to be small time, not to be weak, but to be full and strong and appreciate that the spreading of the holy names and distribution of prasadam is a major gift to society. And the repercussions, just recently, Parashuram in London, he was given the Queen's Award. The Queen recognised their activities in the field of volunteer service. I was fortunate to work in the kitchen with Parashuram. We were on the Polish tour. And I think I got an award from the Queen, the Queen of Vrindavan. Before this particular Woodstock festival, Sri Prahlad had given a class and encouraged, inspiring everybody. You should follow your leader. Your leader is 365 days a year, giving everything, working day and night to distribute Krishna consciousness, thinking, dreaming, breathing about how to give mercy to the conditioned souls and move compassion. So now we've got 96 hours. Just try and give everything for those 96 hours. It was 3 days or 4 days of Woodstock Festival. So anybody who's been there, you know that you're up at 6 in the morning after getting back at 2 or 3 in the morning, and all day long in your assigned service, part of a huge team. Sometimes people, they spend 8 or 10 hours a day for 4 days in a row, just in a school, in a kitchen. They never see the light of day. They're just always listening to the reports, listening to kirtan, and feeling part of the overall mission. So I was fortunate enough to be on the field, but I had a service. I had to arrange volunteers to go back to the kitchens, and it was the last rostered session on. And I tried asking everybody and nobody was coming forward, and the van came up, okay, where's your volunteers? There was nobody there, so I thought, all right, I've got to do it. And I surrendered. And Parashuram, he was there already in the kitchen. So it was really nice to work with him, and he was saying how we should just give the best. We don't have to get this cheap and nasty thing. We should try and get the best quality and give people the best, because that will give the best result in return. People will appreciate that. And just to be with him and imbibe his spirit and to really be inspired, we packed up, and then we packed up what we'd cooked into these big thermoses, 30-litre thermoses, which keep things hot for a long time. Got in the van, and just as we were getting back to the festival, it all finished. The firework display went off, and we thought, what's going on? But the prasadam tent, that would normally go on beyond the end of the festival, and that would close around 2 o'clock. So we got back, packed everything into the tent, and then it was time to close the tent. But I looked around and I saw, hang on, there's 65 big pots, 30-litre pots full of hot prasadam. We can't close up now. So being attached after surrendering so much and being involved in cooking and seeing what was there and trying to get that mood of 96 hours just giving everything, I volunteered again and stayed up all night and distributed the prasadam. The managers, they heard about this nutcase down there who's not wanting to go home, and so they dragged themselves out of bed at 3:30 in the morning and recruited another devotee who was an angry young German man. And somehow or other we managed to cooperate together, and he kept me going, I kept him going. And all night long, and then we got relieved at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Distributed. And then the management, they realised that this was a way to achieve their goal of distributing around 140,000 plates of prasadam in 3 days. And they came at about 8:39 and relieved me. So I wandered in a dazed state back to the base. And the devotees, they rested a little bit, and they were recovering from their big sacrifice. And there was some class in the temple and maybe a kirtan. And I thought, I've got to go to sleep, but no, I'm wired up. I've been up all night. Maybe I'll just go and see what's in the temple. And looking at the altar, little Gandharvika Giridhari. These are the beautiful Radha Krishna deities that were discovered in an antique shop in King's Cross. So they're interesting features. As by just standing there and gazing at them, then I noticed Radharani was giving me sidelong glances. Maybe I was completely hallucinating at that time, but just felt that, and I felt just so relieved and so satisfied from that sacrifice, that surrender. So just, and what motivated me, one of the words that Sri Prahlad was saying, just try and please the spiritual master. Try and do something. Try and discover one of their desires and try and fulfill that desire. Try and tune in to give up your selfishness and just try and please the representative of Krishna. And that way you'll please the devotees and you'll please Krishna. And so the rewards, they're from a different realm, but they satisfy the heart and give you some realization. Those are our gems. We want to preserve them, polish them and worship them and spread them. And that way we can act in following as servants of Lord Chaitanya, we can act as a gardener, as the tree, and bestow benefit upon all. So I know today is Lalita Sakhi's appearance day. got a few little things I wanted to read about her, but if anybody's got any comments, or if I said anything silly, Mani Vanda Prabhu.
Thanks for the class through. So Lord Caitanya, he wants to take on the magnanimity of the tree. Srila Prabhupada is saying that we should take on the qualities of the tree, but we also hear in Bhagavad Gita as 338 that living entities described different analogies according to their situation. So the helpless child within the womb is compared to trees. So I just read just one sentence, that this stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. So it just seems like they're opposite ends of the spectrum. So how do I understand that? It's like extreme lust on one end, on the other hand, so many magnanimous qualities.
The other examples in that purport, is that the child within the womb and smoke covered by fire?
Yeah, fire covered by smoke, mirror covered by dust, embryo in the womb.
Yeah. So in that case, the tree is again magnanimous and lending its sinful past history, that it's stuck, it can't move around. In the spiritual world, then the trees, they can move. So these trees, they're stuck and exposed to the elements. So due to that sinful activity, they're there. If they were pious, somewhat pious, then they can also still be of benefit. They can have some fruits. But otherwise, they're not very elevated living entities. So, but the sadhu, the person who has an appreciation for nature, they can extract a good lesson from a low class situation, from a filthy place. They can extract gold. So, despite these living entities can exhibit this nature, and they're used to describe the degrees of covering and degrees of lust, then still, and Prabhupada was always expert at that. Prabhupada and the people who are well versed in the scriptures, they can always turn around an analogy, despite those faults. Then still there's some value. So yeah, it's good to be able to compare and see how this applies in this circumstance and how it applies in other circumstances. But to get hung up on one element and say that another, it counteracts something else. There's no contradictions in the scriptures. There's no contradictions. They're all different time, place and circumstance, different situations. Okay.
So when you brought up the point of trees producing rain and not being sure about it, you were talking about trees and rain at the start of the lecture. So it reminded me of the purport in the fourth canto. That's why I was playing around with my phone while we're talking. But I just quickly, this is what Prabhupada says in relation to trees and rain. This is in the fourth canto, 30th chapter, verse 44, purport. That's what Prabhupada says. It is not a fact that jungles and trees attract clouds and rain, because we find rainfall over the sea. Human beings can inhabit any place on the surface of the earth by clearing jungles and converting land for agricultural purposes. People can keep cows, and all the economic problems can be solved in that way. One need only work to produce grains and take care of the cows. The wood found in the jungles may be used for constructing cottages. In this way, the economic problem of humanity can be solved. At the present moment, there are many vacant lands throughout the world. If they are properly utilised, there will be no scarcity of food. As far as rain is concerned, it is the performance of Yagna that attracts rain.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, and I think, is that about the Prachetas when they came? They. It's very clear that they had been meditating under the water for 10,000 years, and when they emerged again, the earth had been overrun by trees. So if the trees are not properly managed, if they're not properly utilised, if they're just allowed to go rampant. That's the situation here. When you go to India and you see, oh, this is a forest, there's a few spindly trees, whereas what we're used to is bush, where you can't even walk through it. But that's out of control. A forest needs some very exquisite trees amongst them, and not much rubbish around. So the proper utilisation of trees. And it's a misguided sympathy or sentiment that it's going to be the result or the cause of rain. There's another element of the green vegetation, oxygen, that the photosynthesis, when we breathe out carbon dioxide, then the plants breathe that in and give out oxygen. So that's an indication of a symbiotic relationship of interdependency. And that's a scientific explanation, but a deeper explanation of the recognition of the life force that's in those creatures. And Prabhupada, when you recognise that life force, Prabhupada describes those people who are killing trees wholesale, then they're committing a great debauched activity, and they will suffer a huge sinful reaction. So nowadays there's the sentiment, oh, we'll plant 75,000 trees or 2 billion trees. But I believe in Australia they made some promise, and they've only, in some part of the government, they've only been able to deliver less than 1% of that. They haven't fulfilled their promise. When Korma Prabhu printed his cookbook, he wrote in the front that for every tree that has been used to provide the paper for printing this book, we've planted the equivalent number of trees somewhere else. So I wonder whether they actually did that. But there's a responsibility. Human life with knowledge means responsibility. We've got to be responsible. We can't irresponsibly just destroy things. Lalita Sakhi, 2 days before Radharani's appearance day, so she's very similar in age, and Vishaka is born on the same day as Radharani. They share the same birthday, Bhadra Sukla Ashtami. Lalita is described by some acharyas to be the associate of Radharani and Krishna who teaches the mood of amorous anger. That's her forte. So I was just going to read a little bit here, just to describe, just to let us hear the mood of discussion and the mood of sharing and the mood of the close associates of Krishna. And Lalita, she's highlighted here. This is a discussion between the gopis about the fortune of the Pulindis, the Aboriginal women in the forest who also have the chance to experience the foot dust of Krishna. They find the kumkum, which is there on the trees and on the plants, and they smear that on their breasts, and it helps to relieve their lusty desires. So there was discussion backwards and forwards, because there's one mention of the 7 different types of women, and the Pulindis, the Aboriginal women, they considered a low class because of their activities. They're just living in the forest and picking up trees and bark and things like that. So at one point Lalita, she's brought into the conversation. Her golden complexion defeating the colour of Gorochana. Gorochana, that's the dried up placenta of the cow, isn't it?
It's molten gold.
Molten gold. Gorochana. And possessing innumerable good qualities, so her skin's like molten gold. Lalita Devi is the receptacle of Yasoda Devi's paternal affection. As an alternative to taking birth among the Aborigines of Braj, the Guru of the Sakhis now guides the gopis in how to achieve grace equal to the Pulindis. The Pulindis, and this is quoting from the scriptures, Bhagavatam, the Pulindis have achieved satisfaction by smearing their bodies with the kumkum that was once on Sri Krishna's lotus feet. What austerities they performed for their perfection! As we remain afflicted by lust, I do not know. Friends, this is indeed a wonder. So Krishna's, Radharani's best, she's describing they're afflicted by lust, whereas these Aboriginal women, they have had that relieved. So it's again a comparison, different degrees. Vishaka, who is the very image of Srimati Radharani, she contradicts. When the gopis takes the lotus feet of Hari and gently place it to their hearts, the kumkum which decorates their breasts sticks to his feet and becomes the cosmetic of the Pulindis. So they've got the mercy because it's come from the gopis. Although born of an inferior race, they know the extraordinary value of this priceless commodity and greedily mine it from the grass, creepers and stones of Vrindavan. Dear friend, although you place questions before us as if bewildered, it is you alone who know the answer to your inquiry. Please do not raise a cloud of illusion before our eyes. Vishaka speaking. Looking sweetly at Lalita, her voice laced with humility, Vishaka appealed, Shaki, Lalite, as you are the knower of all things, please be kind to us. Be kind to us. We were born in neighbouring villages. We played naked together in the dust. We grew to puberty concurrently. We were all married in Jabat, and our common life force is the Sangha of Shama Sundari. Please explain how it is that the Pulindis have become so fortunate. Having heard your words of wisdom, we shall follow their example and satisfy the burning in our hearts, which is the influence of the incorporeal god Cupid, and which has caused so much distress to the Braj Gopis. Lalita, she explains that when Lord Ram was around, there were sages in the forest and they wanted to associate with Lord Ram in the mood of conjugal love. So Lord Ram appeared as a brahmachari, as a brahmana, and he blessed them that, well, don't worry now, Ram has taken this vow, Ekapatni Vrata. So, but in the future, you sages, you'll be able to take birth as gopis. So Lalita, she explains that, looking at her gopi friends, that, well, you could have come from that background. Who's to say that you were exalted? So don't be proud of your situation. You could have come from the Aboriginal, the Pulindis background. So just discuss, and then there's a discussion further on that, these are secrets, but now our affection for Krishna has been revealed, so we'll speak amongst ourselves. We normally don't hide these secrets from each other, so we'll discuss these. And who was the best? That's Radharani. She's Daitya. She's the one who affects Krishna's heart the most. And then somebody else complained, one of the other gopis complained, well, Daitya could mean any of the gopis, but there's only one super excellent gopi. But then they're all assistants and they derive benefit. So Lalita in her service, she's encouraging, she's training, amorous anger, and Lalita, she appeared as, in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, as Ramananda Roy, a combined incarnation with Arjuna, as Ramananda Roy, and Ramananda Roy engaged in activities of service with Lord Chaitanya, of describing the topmost aspects of Krishna consciousness. So we should honour Lalita's appearance day and pray for her blessings, her mercy, remember her exalted situation, being close to Radharani and therefore close to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.